The reign of King John, a kingdom in crisis. In medieval England's shadow-laden corridors where incense and whispers of betrayal filled the air, King John's reign unfolded like a storm. The clash of mail and the murmur of discontent echoed through his besieged kingdom. England's peasants barely survived, while the nobility groaned under stifling taxes and unwarranted seizures. A wooden chair might splinter beneath John's infamous temper. A quill poised with ink was set to alter the realm's destiny. As alliances secretly brewed, the tattered veil of feudal obedience wavered, and rebellion swirled like mist over Runnymede. Settle in, dear viewer, as we journey through history's haze into 13th century England's shadowy realm. Here, beneath castle halls, whispering arches, and candlelit courts flicker, reigned King John, a monarch whose unchecked ambition and greed spiraled into a vortex of chaos and rebellion. In this world where power hung by a thread, King John's tale unfolds, setting the stage for one of history's most pivotal documents, the Magna Carta. John's unexpected ascension and troublesome rule. John's rise to the throne was an unexpected twist of fate, a product of familial strife and unforeseen fortune. As Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine's youngest son, he was never meant to wear the crown, a mere footnote among ambitious heirs. Yet fate intervened, and tragedy, the untimely deaths of his elder brothers, including the celebrated Richard the Lionheart, propelled him into a role he seemed woefully unprepared for. This precarious succession only heightened the kingdom's tensions, a realm filled with whispers of dissatisfaction and murmurs of discontent. Once in power, King John's reign became a masterclass in financial excess, a monarch's ceaseless hunger for wealth and control. Imagine the scene, a land burdened with his relentless fiscal demands. As English troops retreated, leaving desolation and disappointment, the blow fanned noble resentment into a full-fledged fury. For a king crowned with conquering dreams, returning from campaigns empty-handed, painted a damning portrait of his capabilities. With each military defeat, morale plummeted, and the tides of revolt surged closer to England's shores. Scandal, ruthlessness, and twisted justice. Amidst these failures, John's reign was haunted by scandal and rumor, casting a longer shadow over his legacy. Tales of licentious behavior and ruthless tactics trailed him, transforming gossip into legend. Beyond finances, his legal system, twisted for personal gain, became a chilling testament to his rule. Justice, rather than protecting the innocent, morphed into a weapon. Courts became theaters of manipulation, favoring those who lined the royal coffers. Bribery and corruption cast long shadows over the legal process, with verdicts swayed by wealth rather than fairness. Those daring to challenge could face expropriation or imprisonment. In this distorted kingdom, justice often lay at the mercy of John's quill, the suffering nobility and fragmented alliances. Amidst this backdrop, even the nobility trembled, caught in a game dictated by a sovereign's unpredictable decrees. The English nobility, a crucial pillar of any monarch's support, bore the brunt of John's oppressive policies. Loyalty, once a two-way street of mutual respect, was replaced by manipulation and alienation. The barons felt the sting of betrayal in land seizures and hostage-taking, methods that altered the intricate dance of medieval power. Their growing frustration echoed through castle halls as whispers gathered like smoke in shadowed chambers. John's lavish disregard fragmented the delicate alliances once binding the crown and nobility, heralding a realm on the brink of internal strife, military defeats, and growing unpopularity. Beyond England's shores, John's reign was marked by military fiascos, further corroding his fragile grip on power. The loss of Normandy, a cherished gem since William the Conqueror's time, was a cataclysmic blunder, erasing England's influence on the continent. As English troops retreated, leaving desolation and disappointment, the blow fanned noble resentment into a full-fledged fury. For a king crowned with conquering dreams, returning from campaigns empty-handed, painted a damning portrait of his capabilities. With each military defeat, morale plummeted, and the tides of revolt surged closer to England's shores. Amidst these failures, John's reign was haunted by scandal and rumor, casting a longer shadow over his legacy. Tales of licentious behavior and ruthless tactics trailed him, transforming gossip into legend. From seizing noble daughters to politically motivated murders like that of his nephew, Arthur of Brittany, stories of John's exploits stained banquet halls and market squares alike. His unpopularity swelled like storm clouds, rendering the kingdom ripe for rebellion. The scandal fueled mistrust, not just in John, but in the monarchy itself, igniting hopes for reform and calls for a document like the Magna Carta. The mounting resentment among England's nobility reached a crescendo, setting the stage for rebellion. Revolt, once mere whispers, grew into a defiant roar against a monarch who trampled on customs and disregarded fealty's sacred bonds. The seeds of rebellion and the path to Runnymede. Meetings were convened in hushed secrecy in stone corridors that served as both sanctuary and war council chambers. Unlikely alliances formed, united by a singular desire to curb tyrannical overreach and restore foundational liberties. King John's regime stood precariously on the edge, his hubris steering the realm toward an inevitable clash. In this cauldron of discontent, the seeds of rebellion took root, setting the prelude to the confrontation at Runnymede. Here, under the weight of financial ruin and skewed justice, a desperate realm readied itself for monumental change. As the echoes of this chapter reverberate through time, we move toward the rebellion's defining moment, the Magna Carta's birth. Normandy's loss and economic hardship. Throughout history's grand tale, these events are not mere footnotes but pivotal acts that forever alter power and rebellion's landscape. In 1204, a dark cloud swept over England, casting an ominous shadow over its nobility. King John, through inept strategic maneuvers and hapless leadership, lost Normandy to France. It was not just any defeat, it severed a vital link to the continent and tarnished noble heritage. The barons, their lineage interwoven with this land, found their pride and power brought low, their whispered outrage filling manorial halls. Conversations once mundane now carried the charge of barely concealed rebellion, turning faithful subjects into bitter critics, discontent simmering like a pot about to boil over. Normandy's loss created economic upheaval. Cut off from their once bountiful continental wealth, the barons faced a harsh fiscal reality. Normandy had been an economic lifeline, its agriculture and trade sustaining noble houses for generations. Now, with wealth flowing like a trickle through a parched stream, they leaned harder on their English tenants. Taxes rising to fill empty coffers, the heavy burden of taxation and the rise of discontent. Noble gatherings transformed from hunting parties into shadowed councils of discontent, where every misstep by John was scrutinized, and every whispered rumor amplified the growing discord. John's relentless pursuit of military recapture left the royal treasury barren. To fix this, John wielded scutage taxes like a cudgel, demanding payment from those peers who shirked military service. These levies, initially rare, became frequent burdens, turning barons into reluctant accountants. Estates strained under this financial drain. As debt soared and noble opulence's facade crumbled, friction grew palpable. Every tax was another spark in a realm already primed for rebellion. For many barons, what was once a chivalrous endeavor was reduced to tallying dues and indignity, stoking defiance's fires. A coalition of grievances and the call for systemic change. Together, these barons formed a coalition glued by shared grievances, no longer voices of dissent, but architects of reform. Quiet defiance gathered strength in shadowed halls teeming with whispered conspiracies. Behind grand tapestries, plots thickened as noblemen looked beyond personal squabbles, contemplating a future not merely of resistance, but of systemic change. Oaths were whispered by flickering candlelight, binding them to a common cause against a capricious king. These murmurs would swell to a resolute call for justice, resonating from castle keeps to country hamlets, a burgeoning symphony of rebellion. Fortune smiled upon these barons as charismatic leaders emerged from their ranks. With voices that could galvanize the disheartened, they transformed the nobles' whispers into a shared demand for change. Their rise in prominence was timely, as if history itself aligned to bolster the baronial cause. From crumbling keeps to rough-hewn taverns, tales of these figures spread, painting them as champions of lost honor, united under a banner of shared vision. The church's role and the peasant's plight, serendipity, or perhaps divine providence, seemed to favor the rebels, providing the momentum needed to unify disparate discontents into a singular force. Even the church, an enduring power, poised itself on rebellion's edges. As John quarreled with the Pope, leaving England spiritually adrift, the church's silence was deafening. An acquiescence, perhaps, but also a tacit endorsement. Archbishop Stephen Langton, a figure of quiet influence, became a linchpin in this rebellion. With a scholar's mind and a cleric's conscience, he threaded through insurrection's complex tapestry, infusing it with a moral dimension that imbued the baronial cause with righteous fervor. Langton's guidance ensured that reform's pursuit was not just a political maneuver, but a moral imperative, intertwining heavenly purpose with earthly ambition. Peasants, the realm's lifeblood, found themselves caught in noble aspirations' swirl. Squeezed by rising taxes and burdened beyond endurance, their plight aligned unwittingly with the barons, forging an improbable alliance in shared suffering's crucible. Between toil for survival and cries for justice, whispers became a rallying call, weaving through fields and market squares, binding the oppressed and the elite into a common narrative of hope and defiance. This unity marched beyond former class boundaries, creating a patchwork of resistance rooted in relief's promise. Crafting the Magna Carta, a blueprint for change. Amidst this swelling dissent, early plans for what would become the Magna Carta began to emerge within manors and dimly lit chambers. Far beyond a mere list of complaints, it heralded a fundamental shift in governance. An involuntary contract binding king and subject, sculpted with careful intent to cage royal power's unruly tendrils. Draft by draft, the barons sowed the seeds of an ideology heralding the rule of law, rather than tyranny, aspirations etched by quill into existence. Ideals took shape, concepts of justice uncorrupted, imprisonment ordered lawful, and taxes entwined with common consent, even as each line became a resolute step toward transformation. By 1215, the air buzzed with expectation. England stood on civil confrontation's edge as the barons gathered, both in arms and word, ready to face John's tyranny. Emboldened by a cause that transcended mere power struggles, they were prepared to inscribe history's page with reform's ink. Rebellion's momentum became unstoppable, a confluence of economic misery, charismatic leadership, and ecclesiastical support, creating a groundswell no king could silence. Lips muttered prayers even as banners were unfurled, marking the start of an irreversible journey toward Runnymede and a future redefined. In King John's murky realm, justice wasn't blind, it was coin-operated. The medieval courts, meant to dispense fairness, had turned into auction houses where justice was sold to the highest bidder. Judicial corruption and royal excess. For all the wealth of the nobles and emerging merchants, anyone without deep pockets found themselves trampled beneath the crown's heavy foot. Everyday folk, once hopeful of the law's protection, faced a bleak reality where grievances piled up like rubble without resolution. Young sheriffs and aging judges, extensions of John's iron will, whispered crude edicts, carrying out commands that favored power over righteousness, leaving a kingdom's promise of fairness shattered on the cold stone floor. Imagine, if you will, a peasant in a patched cloak, his skin weathered by toil, watching his meager plot seized on a royal whim. Lands, the heartbeats of livelihoods and wealth, were swallowed up as John expanded his kingdom, not by borders, but by family's ruin. These seizures weren't mere acts of greed. They tore at the feudal fabric that defined each class and creed. The nobility, bound by chivalry and lineage, saw their honor stained, spurring them to mutter of rebellion in dim halls, where shadowed figures plotted by hearth fires crackle. Hostages, innocent children of barons, became chips at John's table. Their fates tossed like dice with each political maneuver, turning alliances into tinder, waiting only for the smallest spark. As these land grabs and hostage-takings continued, whispers of revolt spread like ink on vellum across the kingdom. There was beauty in their subversion, a lyrical defiance whispered under castle arches and in merchant quarters burrows. A proto-political awakening in the role of Langton. Barons, knights, even wealthy merchants found themselves weaving a clandestine tapestry of dissent, their threads braiding into a formidable network. Secrecy cradled these meetings where a vision for change twinkled amidst plot-strewn parchments. This was no rebellion of brute force, but a proto-political awakening, an understanding blossoming that governance needed accountability, that even kingship was not etched in destiny's stone, but written as ink, subject to smudge and revision. In these turbulent times, a surprising figure emerged as a beacon amongst gathering storm clouds. Archbishop Stephen Langton. Educated in Paris's grandeur, Langton was no stranger to intellect and morality's dance. He was a man of the cloth with a statesman's acumen, whose whispered advice became a guiding hand for the barons, urging them to articulate their grievances not just with passion, but with precision. He planted seeds for a governance that fused moral duty with civic responsibility. His insights lent legitimacy to their cause, framing it as divine reflection, demanding a secular response. Meanwhile, political tension mirrored a massive chessboard where John and his barons played with land and lives, straining the kingdom to civil unrest's brink. The king, isolated in his castle, was too blind or too proud to see each oppressive act only bolstered his opponents. The barons coalesced under shared banners, not in simple rebellion, but with a burning desire for governance rooted in fairness and enshrined law, uniting under flags stitched with scars and shared dreams of justice, fiscal pressure and eroding loyalty. Yet even in tyranny's claustrophobic air, John's desperation launched fresh assaults, taxes, fines, and demands as relentless and sharp as a biting wind. His subjects, like leaves in autumn's first gale, rustled with discontent, twining into an uneasy alliance more from survival than solidarity. This regime of fiscal pressure forced even the most steadfast allies to wonder when their feudal loyalties had become nooses slung about their necks, tugged tighter by an indifferent king. The Crusades' shadow and the demand for a new compact. Shadowing this domestic unrest were the Crusades' echoes, a time when kings won renown and territories with glorious bloodshed under faith's banner. Yet John's failures mocked these ideals, his ineptitude contrasting harshly with conquest and valor's gallant knightly narratives. Barons, still caught in chivalry's haze, found John's reign lacking, devoid of the shared sacrifice and honor that once transformed men into legends. Instead, his realm fettered under a rule that failed to inspire collective advancement spirit. Bit by bit, what started as a scattered chorus of unhappiness became a harmonious demand, a call for a new social compact, a charter more binding than old oaths. The Magna Carta, even in its nascent thought, promised a unity whereby individual struggles blended into a quest for shared justice. This alchemy of rebellion transformed England herself, forging a new identity against John's brutal chastisement, showing that even the most ironclad rule could be questioned and reshaped. Overt defiance in the edge of monumental change. And so in John's reign's dusk, quiet whispers in cobbled corridors swelled into overt defiance's storm. Knights clad in mail, barons donned in fur, rallied soldiers under honored governance's common cry. No longer could harsh decrees muffle their resolve for freedom from arbitrary commands. The air, crackling with tension, awaited the spark to set alight waiting kindling of revolution. England stood poised on monumental change's edge. The clash of swords and dreams signaled an era's dawn where justice invited action, leading the kingdom to a future marked by a monarchical restraint unimaginable just a year before. The Kingdom of England teetered on chaos's edge, its once monolithic monarchy now under intense scrutiny, a realm on the brink, the need for the Magna Carta. King John's reign had left a nation burdened with crippling taxes and devoid of fair justice. The oppressive atmosphere was thick with discontent, a despair that echoed in every corner, from impoverished villages to noble estates' grand halls. Once staunch supporters of John's family, the barons knew the realm's survival demanded change. The Magna Carta was born from this dire need, its demands both evocative and groundbreaking. Ironically, amid such turmoil, King John remained ensconced within his sumptuous throne room. His land, however, was on collapse's brink, pushed by wars and mismanagement. The threat of rebellion simmered beneath the surface, only agitated by John's neglect of traditions that once held his kingdom together. Desolate fields and whispers of worry mingled with country roads' dust and taverns' shadows. England stood on a precipice, poised for a confrontation echoing through the ages, a legacy unforeseen by either king or baron. In this dire landscape, the barons' unity was as unexpected as it was unprecedented. Unlikely alliances and a manifesto for rights. Driven by shared desperation, they rallied against unchecked royal tyranny. These lords, each with their own histories and rivalries, found a cause larger than themselves. Their manifesto articulated demands born from long-standing grievances, but shared across England's diverse lands. In a show of widespread disdain for John's rule, even clergy, knights, and merchants joined this unlikely coalition, an alliance forged from necessity rather than commonality. Meeting in secret, these barons hailed from diverse backgrounds, ambitions, and dialects, yet found strength in unity. Bound by a singular goal, they withstood threats of royal retribution, forging a manifesto that was more than a list of grievances. It was a lifeline thrown to England's people, promising a future where feudal law balanced power and promoted accountability. Their demands, both simple and sweeping, advocated for rights trampled by a king who deemed himself above accountability. Rooted in an ancient tradition, the barons called for the restoration of church rights, fair justice, and cessation of oppressive taxes, demands that transcended baronial privilege. These were revolutionary propositions, mapping a vision of governance bound by accountability. The church's moral authority and strategic alliances. The church played a critical role, their involvement lending a moral legitimacy hard for the crown to ignore. Figures like Archbishop Stephen Langton mediated, grounding the baronial cause in spiritual authority demanding justice. The church, too, had suffered under John's reign, making their participatory stand both morally rich and strategically shrewd. In aligning with the barons, the clergy provided a divine underpinning to the Magna Carta, balancing the scales against a sovereign's tyranny. Creating the Magna Carta demanded clarity amidst chaos. Its articles addressed historical grievances while stoking newfound aspirations. The document's language was precise, leaving no room for royal misinterpretation. Crafting the charter, precise language and revolutionary concepts. At its core, the charter sought not just reform, but shared governance where the rule of law applied to all, even the king. Habeas corpus and other terms reach beyond their time, orienting toward a future where justice mirrored ancient customs, offering insurance for human dignity. Crafting this revolutionary document was no simple feat. Negotiations were intricate and shrouded in secrecy, punctuated by veiled threats and open dialogues. Every draft reflected potential consequences and demanded a blend of urgency and care. The barons and John's emissaries treaded carefully, knowing the stakes stretched far beyond personal ambitions. The sealing of the charter and a fragile peace. The Magna Carta emerged from these tense negotiations as a testament to the art of compromise, a living blueprint of debate that aimed to redefine power and secure the future. When the time came to seal the Magna Carta, it was more than a mere act of compliance. Each signature represented an emblem of newfound accountability, binding the monarchy to good governance's tenets. Pressured, King John placed his seal on the document amidst reluctant acceptance. This symbolic act promised change, a legal acknowledgement that the king was not above the law. Yet beneath the surface, John's hesitance foretold a fragile peace. The Magna Carta marked a radical shift in England's power dynamics, a shift in power dynamics and public response. In a society entrenched in feudal hierarchy, it heralded the revolutionary notion that no ruler was beyond limitations or accountability. This charter challenged the traditional balance of monarchy and aristocracy, encouraging shared governance's vision. Responses to this declaration quickly swept through England, fascinating a populace wary yet hopeful for change. Conversations filled alehouses and great halls alike, mixing excitement with anxiety. Chroniclers spread the story far and wide, each retelling colored by perspective. The Magna Carta connected people with both unity and division, its significance vividly felt in every corner of society. Approaching Runnymede, tension and the promise of liberty. Approaching Runnymede, tension mounted. Every missive anticipated the meeting between desperate barons and a pressured monarch. Runnymede became a stage for history, an arena for sovereign control and subject rights meeting. Final preparations were laden with the promise of either resolution or conflict. There, amidst grass fields soon to bear witness, lay liberty's promise, born from desperation, foreshadowing rights that continue to echo across centuries. The prelude to Runnymede, discontent and determination. In the early 13th century, England was a nation simmering on the brink, torn apart by King John's oppressive reign. The land buzzed with rebellion as barons, crushed under ruinous taxes, meant to bankroll John's botched military exploits in France, whispered resistance. Their estates, once proud symbols of noble privilege, felt the cold grip of John's greed and erratic rule. With justice as negotiable as a church bell's toll on market day, even common folk, perpetually burdened by hardship, sensed their king's desperation tightening its noose. By 1215, the barons were steeled for confrontation, aware that this wasn't merely a game of chess played on opulent castle floors, but a life-or-death struggle. Their gatherings, once filled with merriment, now became enclaves of solemn resolve, their laughter replaced by rebellion's quiet plotting words. What loomed ahead was uncertain, but the barons stood united, determined to bring the king to heel by demanding he acknowledge limits on his power. Their cause was dangerous, seeking change that might restore balance or plunge the realm into chaos. Come June, these powerful men journeyed to Runnymede, carrying their ambitions' weight as they arrived at the Thames' lush banks. It was a deliberate choice, a meadow situated between John's stronghold at Windsor Castle and their own domains, where the openness served as both symbol and strategy. The assembly at Runnymede, a crucible of hope and danger. Arriving at this verdant plain, the barons prepared for a confrontation with a king who had proven as slippery as a fish in a barrel. As they gathered, the air crackled with tension, the countryside's stillness as deceptive as a false friend's smile. Despite inherent dangers, an undercurrent of courage infused the assemblage, a spirit that bound the barons and their allies in tyranny's face. They knew this gathering wasn't just a debate over land or titles. It was a pivot point in England's story. The scene buzzed with quiet conversations, nods, and glances exchanged between allies whose loyalty was as fragile as a winter's feather. Here, amidst lingering violence's shadow, there was a unity born not only of shared demand, but the audacity to dream of a world reigned by the rule of law, not a capricious king. King John's arrival, defiance masking. Anxiety. King John arrived at Runnymede in his finery, an embattled monarch whose defiance masked lurking anxiety beneath his regal facade. Though cornered, he exuded stubborn resistance, a smirk playing on his lips as he appraised the assembly. There was no retreat in him, merely survival and swagger's precarious dance. Beneath his royal tranquility's cloak lay a hard-honed to medieval politics cutthroat ballet, where trust walked hand in hand with treachery. Each concession was a reluctant step, each word carefully bartered in a wilderness of distrust. The crafting of the Magna Carta unfurled as a delicate task, each line a stitch in a tapestry intended to bind, not bleed. Yet beneath Runnymede's sky, the very act of inscribing this charter felt monumental. Scribblers scratched and labored over parchment, each stipulation a counterweight in royal excess and noble expectation scales. For the barons, this was not merely a document, but a roadmap toward equity, confronting a ruler who had traded trust for betrayal. King John watched as his seal became, ironically, freedom's mark. Only later would those present grasp the document's significance, its potential to transcend mere accord and transform into governance's cornerstone. For now, it was a practical exercise, a means to stave off bloodshed, the act of sealing and its unforeseen legacy. The act of sealing the Magna Carta carried unassuming finality, a customary formality. Yet it inadvertently sowed seeds of change that would flourish long after John's reign. In the noonday sun, the wax became resilient chains of legacy, linking one king's troubled rule with society's future ideals. As the barons left Runnymede, a sense of relief mingled with doubt. Yes, they had wrested a concession from a tyrant, but trust's thread was always thin. They rushed back to their estates, wary of lingering too near this epicenter of triumph and tenuous peace. Meanwhile, King John held no true intention to abide by his begrudging promises. He viewed the Magna Carta as a temporary yoke to be shrugged off at the next opportunity, a tactical sidestep in power and politics' ongoing game. In the gathering's wake, England's tranquility proved brittle. The barons hoped for a true testament of justice, one that might curb arbitrary rule. Runnymede immediate aftermath and the birth of an idea. Yet immediate belief in the document's longevity varied, particularly under a king as fickle as John. However, the Magna Carta planted possibility's seed, envisioning collective governance where law overruled flawed sovereignty. In this infancy stage of parliamentary thought, barons were poised both to hope and to guard against future betrayals. Though Runnymede's fields soon returned to pastoral quiet, the charter's implications would resonate through history. While initially tethered to feudal reality, it began an ideological journey that would eventually inspire new notions of democracy and governance. This great charter infused aristocracy's insular world with accountability's faint light, setting the stage for broader struggles for rights and freedoms. What unfolded that day grew quietly but insistently, becoming a symbol of transformation long before its true potential was widely recognized. Reflecting on Runymede's unlikely genesis, one marvels at the irony. A desperate, pragmatic attempt to avoid further conflict inadvertently paved the way for future transformations in power's balance. History often writes its most enduring narratives with a touch of paradox, and the Magna Carta's emergence is a testament to human ambition and accident's complexity. It was less about creating democracy than setting the stage for a dialogue of freedom and responsibility that would endure far beyond medieval horizons. The Magna Carta, a quiet anthem for justice. In medieval England's flickering light, where power was wielded like an iron fist, the Magna Carta emerged as a quiet anthem for justice. King John's reign, infamous for cruelty and caprice, left noblemen and commoners alike yearning for fairness. Under his rule, land could vanish without trial, and justice was merely another transaction in the royal ledger. The people lived in shadows, oppressed by a system of personal vendettas and arbitrary taxation. Yet in power's corridors, whispers of change began to echo, a promise that soon even a king's deaf ears would heed. Amidst this turbulent realm, the Magna Carta introduced ideas akin to modern judicial systems, declaring no free man could be imprisoned without lawful judgment. Judicial reforms and the challenge to royal power. This was a radical departure from arbitrary decrees, challenging royal power's very essence. Imagine hope glimmering in the time's dank dungeons, where those unjustly jailed heard due process's distant promise. While initially serving noble interests, this notion of justice transcended its origins, slowly evolving into a fundamental human right, now enshrined globally. In this era of unchecked monarchical might, the demand for common consent in taxation was groundbreaking. The barons, weary of John's unilateral levies to fund foreign escapades, sought accountability and transparency. Their cries against corruption and excess were more than demands for fairness. They called for royal restraint. These voices introduced modern systems' rudiments, where power and purse must entwine in shared governance. While slow and imperfect, this precedent of shared fiscal authority marked parliamentary reform's dawn. Even more revolutionary was the challenge to the king's divine right, the erosion of divine right and the foundation for constitutional monarchy. Overnight, the Magna Carta shifted the sovereign's place from divine arbiter to mere mortal tethered by law. The barons, with nascent courage, clipped absolute authority's wings, crafting a framework for future constitutional monarchies. Chroniclers cautiously recorded these events, aware of their audacity. This principle that no one stands above the law laid the groundwork for democratic ideals flourishing today, redefining relationships between rulers and ruled. Amidst visible power dynamics, shadowy figures, advisors, clergy, and noblemen manipulated events, leveraging new Magna Carta principles to silently sway decisions. These invisible players, though often overlooked, fortified the document's tenets, ensuring durability beyond its inked promises. Covert alliances and the preservation of justice. In monasteries and guild halls, covert alliances formed, safeguarding this fragile assurance of justice against royal defiance. While historical records may gloss over these figures, they played crucial roles in shaping medieval England's legal fabric. Resistance simmered as England navigated this newfound path. While the ink dried, alliances between barons and guilds spiraled into a broad movement toward reform and adaptation. Local lords and commoners crafted charters echoing the Magna Carta's philosophy. Across regions, the document transcended its birthplace, whispering reform across borders. Its spirit of justice found resonance in courts from Sicily to Spain, stitching a subtle yet resilient narrative of proto-republicanism into the medieval tapestry. Scrutiny, adaptation, and enduring tenets. Despite initial skepticism, the Magna Carta's clauses endured scrutiny and adaptation. King John's attempts to annul its promises only hastened its champions' resolve. Each trial refined the document, standing resilient against political strains, binding its core tenets even tighter. Dubbed both sacred and seditious, it survived through rebellion, fear, and eventual acceptance, evolving from noble privilege into a living testament of civil liberty, setting the stage for modern legal constructs. The Magna Carta's journey transformed it from baronial privilege to collective consciousness. Reinterpreted through the ages, it paralleled societal evolution, from feudal systems to democratic governance, amplifying collective power while reflecting individual freedoms. A beacon for global human rights and enduring principles. Inspired by its enduring principles, it threaded through global narratives, advocating for justice and accountability. It became a beacon for civic rights, a story of human struggle interwoven with the quest for equality and order. Centuries after that fateful meeting at Runnymede, the Magna Carta's legacy echoes in democracy's worldwide bedrock. Its principles find articulation in constitutions and charters, timeless symbols of defiance against tyranny. The document remains a reminder of law's power to humanize authority, a testament whispered across history's corridors. Its ink may have faded, but its impact remains vivid, urging us to recall history's hard-earned lessons and inspiring an equitable future through unyielding change's undying tremor. King John's betrayal and the annulment of the charter. In Runnymede's immediate aftermath, hope flickered among England's barons like a dying fire's last embers. The Magna Carta seemed to triumph, a powerful king brought low by pen and seal. Whispers of a justice no longer dictated by royal whim spread through fog-bound lanes and bustling marketplaces. Yet to believe in this liberty's permanence was to fatally misunderstand King John. Known as much for his guile as his blunders, John had yielded not from conviction but necessity. His seal on the Magna Carta was a pause button, buying time in imminent revolt's face. Even as the parchment dried, John, a man who saw conspiracy behind every shadow, plotted revenge. Peace was a costume he donned, but betrayal simmered beneath. That summer, as June's warmth turned to autumn's chill, his mind was already churning. Letters flew to the Pope, seeking annulment, while castles echoed with hammers and gathered loyalist cries. The Magna Carta, intended as a compromise, became a shackle John had no intention of wearing. As the barons returned to their keeps, their hopes stood on uneasy ground. John knew rebellion lingered, deferred, not defeated. He set about undermining the charter, reorganizing courts to favor loyalists, and promising lands to mercenaries, laying stones for war, not peace. Castles stirred with war preparations, their keeps filled not with provisions, but weapons and men. Meanwhile, John sought solace from the highest authority, the Pope. His cries of duress found a willing ear. On August 24, 1215, Pope Innocent III annulled the Magna Carta, claiming it sullied divine right. Emboldened by papal backing, John was ready not just to challenge, but to crush the barons. This declaration was the spark that lit dry tinder, the outbreak of civil war and ideological collision. Among the barons, whispers of betrayal turned to cries of rebellion. The annulment was a betrayal that justified their cause. Secrets were shared in secluded manors and shadowed alcoves as they swore to defend Runnymede's hard-won rights and justice. The network of rebellion stretched across England, from wealth's secluded halls to churches' stone-walled chambers. Hushed alliances grew thick as the mist on the Thames. England's paths, bustling with traders and travelers, now bore soldiers and steeds' weight. The realm was divided. Loyalists to the crown blanketed fields with their banners, while barons upheld the liberties enshrined at Runnymede. Villages, once mere marks on lords' maps, became stages for struggles defining a nation. The clash of swords and battering rams' thunder echoed through once peaceful valleys. Warfare in its grim form unspooled. Medieval tactics met raw tenacity. The contest reflected not just a struggle for land, but an ideological collision, unwieldy and fierce. Rochester Castle became the conflict's crucible, its shadow a symbol of defiance. The siege of Rochester and broader conflict. Barons fortified it against royal fury. Strategically vital, it was a bulwark John could not abide. In October 1215, he besieged it, determined to make an example. The siege dragged on for weeks, a testament to endurance and defiance. Archers loosed deadly salvos, and sappers undermined walls. Brutality escalated, and death's stench mingled with wet stone walls as supplies dwindled. Ultimately, the fortress fell not from conquest but starvation. Despite tactical wins, the broader war teetered on a knife's edge. Involvement from Pope Innocent III complicated matters. His backing emboldened John, but deepened schisms. The papal legate Pandolf tried to mend these, but tensions brewed instead. Even France watched keenly, with King Philip II offering clandestine support to the barons. International intrigue and a fractured nation. International intrigue swirled, and alliances were less matters of belief than necessity. As 1216 dawned, skirmishes continued unabated. England's lands lay scarred, and its people, nobles and peasants alike, bore a fractured nation's burden. John's response was relentless, a parade of sieges and skirmishes. Heavy taxes and brutal punishments alienated even his loyalists. His paranoia eroded trust faster than it built walls. Rumors stirred among courtiers, and spiteful whispers threaded through the kingdom. Then in October, mortality made its inevitable claim. Struck by dysentery, John found his power slipping away. As his life ebbed, the bonds he tightened around his kingdom loosened. On October 18, 1216, he died, leaving behind a realm teetering on change's brink. King John's demise and the accession of Henry III. His passing was both relief and shock, punctuating a reign marred by chaos. In John's death's wake, young Henry III, his 9-year-old son, ascended amidst the kingdom's debris. Guided by capable regents like William Marshall, they sought stability. The Magna Carta was reissued, revised, its spirit preserved. Henry's rule signaled healing, with reconciliations and reparations. The document, once contested, became a symbol not of rebellion but hope. Where John had sowed discord, his heirs sought peace. Thus, England inched toward a future not written in blood, but ink. A future where the Magna Carta became an enduring bastion against tyranny, its resonance echoing through the ages. In autumn 1216, amidst civil war and political treachery's stormy chaos, King John of England met an ignoble demise. Hunched over in despair, he was beleaguered not only by his kingdom's disintegration, but by violent dysentery's physical agony. An ignoble end and an uncertain future. This notorious ailment, all too familiar in England's dank marshlands, offered a grim punctuation to his reign. Chroniclers paint a picture of John's camp filled with dying authorities' fetid stench, a pitiful reflection of a king whose dire actions had isolated him from allies and subjects alike. In death, John's presence no longer haunted the land, leaving behind a nation teetering on an uncertain future's cusp. With his 9-year-old son, Henry III, suddenly thrust into kingship's perilous light, the mood at John's passing was not somber mourning, but an odd mix of unease and relieved expectation. With the tyrant gone, there was a fleeting chance to redirect England from tyranny toward more stable rule. Yet such an opportunity's weight rested precariously on young Henry's slender shoulders as capable advisors scrambled to fortify his fragile rule. Quickly, in Gloucester Abbey's hushed halls, amidst high nobles and clergy gathered far from the capital's turmoil, Henry was crowned king. The ceremony was stripped of grandiosity, driven by necessity more than tradition. With a papal legate, Gualabichier, ensuring divine legitimacy was firmly bestowed despite the boy's tender age. A new reign and the strategic reissuance of the Magna Carta. This unexpected turn of fate opened a chapter where seasoned hands like William Marshall's, the esteemed Knight's Knight, took the helm. As regent, Marshall navigated political unrest's turbulent waters with strategic acumen, setting out to resurrect the ailing monarchy's credibility. Central to these efforts was the clever reissuance of the Magna Carta. a move steeped in politics and cunning. Stripped of its more controversial demands, the 1216 version of the charter was less a surrender than a calculated olive branch that pacified fractious barons. By reimagining it as a document of reconciliation rather than rebellion, Marshall inadvertently sowed the seeds for a future characterized by negotiation rather than outright conflict. The Magna Carta evolves from weapon to symbol. Under Marshall's stewardship, the Magna Carta underwent transformations from a weapon of dissent to a symbol of governance. Swiftly chiseled into something more than mere parchment, its principles of moderation and reform reverberated through English law's veins. Reissued and refined in subsequent years, the Charter evolved beyond its immediate context, acquiring significance transcending 13th century politics, momentary desperation. It became a living testament to lawful governance over brute monarchical caprice's possibility, a metamorphic leap for medieval English society. In the process, the Magna Carta unexpectedly championed personal freedoms. While initially safeguarding nobility's rights, its clauses whispered promises of broader liberties. The notion that no free man could be lawfully imprisoned without trial slowly stirred commoners' imaginations. Seeds of freedom and global inspiration. Though rooted in elite privileges, these ideas rippled outward, seeding thoughts of autonomy that would gradually inspire wider societal aspirations for justice beyond noble confines. As years unfolded, the Magna Carta's endurance became a source of inspiration far beyond England's borders. In crafting language for resistance, it resonated through time and space as an advocate against tyranny. Barons once bracing against oppressive sovereigns transformed into symbols for future generations, emboldened to challenge despotism. Its principles found new life in distant lands and epochs, a testament to the enduring human struggle for justice, a timeless testament to the pursuit of fairness. At its heart, the Magna Carta captured a people yearning for fairness, tenacious spirit, a quiet yet potent reminder of transformative power birthed from humble beginnings. Its legacy, inscribed in political upheaval's ink and molded from resistance's steel, highlighted resilience and hope's narrative that echoed across centuries. It served as both anchor and compass, guiding successive generations through evolving challenges while remaining steadfast in its call for justice and equity. Thus, as its clauses echoed through history, the Magna Carta became not merely a relic of its time, but a dynamic force, influencing constitutional governance's birth and inspiring liberty's champions. Across generations, its story breathed new life into lawful order and shared sovereignty's ideals, leaving an indelible mark on modern democracy's foundational principles. In this enduring tapestry of human aspiration, the Magna Carta stands as a timeless testament to justice's relentless pursuit, written with a legacy that forever intertwines ink with those seeking a fair world. The Magna Carta's enduring spirit. Imagine the Magna Carta, its physical form aging, written on parchment in 1215, destined to fade much like the dreams it first embodied. At its outset, the document appeared little more than a temporary truce between a beleaguered King John and his disgruntled barons. Born of necessity, it seemed poised to become just another failed attempt to curb monarchy's seemingly endless reach. Initially, its practical effect was minor, a whisper of rebellion soon subdued with John's death and reissuing by his son Henry III, barely marking its significance on the medieval world. Yet while the literal scrolls may have crumbled or vanished into neglect, the ideas contained within began weaving themselves quietly into English consciousness's fabric. It slowly whispered of rights and justice, hard to imagine at a time when power rode with an iron fist and whims could decide a man's fate. As centuries rolled on, these scrolls' physical presence diminished, but their spirit took root. The Magna Carta's very essence became a beacon, its promise of fairness and accountability whispering through power's halls. A strange sort of immortality that was unanticipated by any who first signed it into being at Runnymede. As centuries unfolded, copies were lost or dismissed, yet underlying ideals simmered just below history's veneer, symbolizing hope against tyranny and despotism, revival and influence on English common law. One might imagine these early concepts, fragile as the material they were inked upon, slowly solidifying into a robust dialogue about governance and power, becoming essential threads in English political life's tapestry. The Magna Carta, like a parchment phoenix, rose again in moments of political unrest under monarchs such as Edward I. This wasn't its swan song, but rather a renaissance where the document was pulled from obscurity during civil strife, not as a relic but a living testament to liberty and constraint's complex dynamics. Edward, recognizing its promise's utility, reaffirmed it not just to quell baronial unrest, but to strengthen his own reign by showcasing a monarchy willing to concede to the governed. The reaffirmation during these tumultuous periods ensured that the Magna Carta transcended obscurity's annals, fastening it into governance's evolving narrative. And so, as we turn time's pages, the original clauses, whose vision seemed narrow, expanded, subtly influencing English common law. Clause 39, asserting no man should be imprisoned without due judgment, laid the groundwork for habeas corpus principles, acting as cornerstones of liberty in legal evolution. No longer just a voice of barons, these ideas burgeoned into what we now recognize as fundamental rights like trial by jury, a shift from days when fate might be drawn from divine judgment. Indeed, Magna Carta reached beyond medieval disputes, embedding itself within a legal framework that sought to balance personal freedom with social order's requirements. This wasn't merely confined to English shores. Magna Carta's spirit inspired many, including rebels and reformers who yearned for justice across eras. The English Civil War and its contentious struggles bore witness to moments where the Magna Carta was brandished against King Charles III, a symbol asserting even a monarch must bow to the law, a blueprint for revolution and democracy. This refrain of resistance rippled outward, mingling with Enlightenment ideals, offering philosophical underpinning to the notion that rights were inherently possessed rather than graciously bestowed. Revolutionary fervor even crossed the Atlantic, influencing American founding fathers as they penned the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, drawing deeply from the Magna Carta's well of constrained power and representative taxation. Threads woven into American governance's very fabric. Modern relevance and global impact. Fast forward to our own tumultuous century, and Magna Carta remains a familiar refrain in courtrooms and legal discourse worldwide. As debates flare over security laws or digital privacy, the Charter's spirit is invoked, its words serving as a lens for examining liberty and justice. Its past echoes continue to confront modern challenges, reminding us that unchecked power's struggle knows no temporal boundaries. Even today, whether confronting surveillance or intellectual property issues, Magna Carta's enduring principles act as a bridge between past intentions and present dilemmas, a signal fire of rights that continues to burn through time's passage. As we reflect on this journey spanning over 800 years, what began as a mere parchment contract grew into a universal anthem against tyranny. The Magna Carta stands as a monument to human dignity and justice's enduring ideal. Despite its medieval origins, its impact reverberates far beyond the Tur Latin scrolled by monks. Its legacy invites every generation to join a relentless march toward fairness and accountability, maintaining its place as a testament to our unyielding quest for freedom. The tale of Magna Carta is a haunting reminder that the heart's longing for justice remains timeless, resonating through history's corridors, touching lives in present and future endeavors. The year was 1215, under gathering storm clouds at Runnymede, where a humble English meadow's damp grass silently bore witness to the sealing of the Magna Carta, a revolutionary concept, law above king. Here was no ordinary treaty between King John and his discontented barons. It was the birth of a revolutionary concept. No ruler, however mighty, stood untouchable by law. An idea this bold was more explosive than medieval battlefields' steel clashes. It was unheard of in an age when power typically squeezed justice in its iron grip. The clauses spoke directly to this power, whispering promises of limitations, fairness, and protections that echoed beyond their era. As the ink dried, this ostensibly pragmatic solution to feudal strife began a curious transformation. Its principles, intended to address English barons' grievances dealing with a capricious king, rapidly grew wings, carrying the charter far beyond its watery roots by the Thames. A beacon of hope and global resonance. A beacon was lit, sparking imaginations far beyond England's shores. The idea that absolute power could be challenged and laws should govern was undeniably potent. The Magna Carta's ideals awaited patiently, ready to kindle revolutions and democratic movements in lands yet unimagined. This thin parchment, initially a list of rights and obligations specific to a feudal context, took on global resonances over time. Amidst peat fires' smell and blacksmith hammers' clamor, Magna Carta's simple, profound demands transformed how societies perceive justice. Its clauses, like flickering torch flames, now illuminating the path toward broader human rights. By curbing personal whims and elevating lawful judgment's necessity, it transcended its original feudal context to become a universal symbol of law's rule. Over centuries, the Magna Carta seeped into global governance's veins, influencing nations and resonating in newfound republics. Constitutions around the world would find themselves echoing the medieval document's demands, shaping global governance and broader rights. A legal rippling effect seen from the English Bill of Rights to the U.S. Constitution. What was born in medieval England's heart evolved, carrying with it the possibility of challenging autocracy and inspiring movements for justice, emancipation, and equal rights across continents. But while it initially served a privileged few's rights, the Magna Carta laid a foundation for broader universal rights. Over time, its principle of accountability blossomed, inching its protections beyond entrenched hierarchies. Seeds planted firmly in medieval soil sprouted across societal strata, questioning injustices and nurturing rights expansion. This ancient document became a rallying standard for justice, embraced by movements demanding their own freedoms and reforms, finding relevance in upheavals spanning nations and centuries. Cornerstone of English common law and legal transformation. When it came to shaping English common law, the Magna Carta proved indispensable. Its insistence on due process and immediacy in justice transformed haphazard medieval rulings into a tradition resilient enough to weather centuries. Concepts like habeas corpus and trial by jury rooted themselves in its dictates, forming cornerstones of present-day English jurisprudence. Throughout legal transformations, the Magna Carta stood as a touchstone, a beacon for justice revered in debates within expanding empires and freshly minted legal systems. A surprising chapter in the Magna Carta story unfolded across the Atlantic during the American Revolution. Flames of dissent kindled by injustices like unchecked taxation drew strength from this medieval blueprint, inspiration for the American Revolution and human rights. It offered colonists a shield, a historical defense against parliamentary overreach and royal capriciousness, a remarkable transformation from a feudal agreement into a herald of autonomy and democratic promise. Even into the 20th century, the Magna Carta's legacy encountered a revival, serving as inspiration for burgeoning global human rights campaigns. In an era scarred by conflict's consequences, its ancient ink laid conceptual roots for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Campaigns against apartheid, genocide, and discrimination found solace in this medieval manuscript, while rights movements worldwide continued drawing strength from its message of dignity and protection. Cultural impact and enduring principles. In popular culture, the Magna Carta holds sway, its story woven into literature, film, and art, captivating audiences with a tale of freedom against tyranny. This immense document captivates through its historical heft, threading through biographies, screenplays, and educational curricula, reminding each new generation of fair governance and justice's persistent necessity. Its principles are now deeply embedded in constitutions around the world, echoing within foundational agreements that shape nations. As modern governance unfolds, these timeless ideals connect diverse societies, fostering international dialogues. In this way, the Magna Carta fulfills its extraordinary potential, crossing borders and centuries to resonate with global aspirations for democracy and justice. Facing modern challenges and writing history, the landscape may change, but the Magna Carta stands firm amidst contemporary challenges. Technology, politics, and societal norms evolve ceaselessly. Yet the Charter's promises of accountability endure, becoming increasingly vital in debates over digital privacy and civil liberties. Its resonance burns brightly, a call to action against overreaching power structures seeking to undermine human freedoms. Centuries after its inception, the Magna Carta continues to write its story. It stands not as an ancient relic, but a living testament to the human spirit's boundless resilience in its pursuit of liberty. The quest for justice and accountability remains ongoing as generations look to this enduring symbol for inspiration in building a more equitable world. And so, dear viewers, as you ponder the past that shapes our present, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's keep these ancient tales alive in our modern world.